Welcome, I'll be reacting to Becoming Jane. This is an auto-market substitute. Please support the original. That's happened to me. I sometimes write letters with a quill, and when it splatters like that, so frustrating. You have to start from the beginning. I guess that's the equivalent of a neighbor playing loud music really early in the morning, except it's coming from inside the house.
I've shared your bed for 32 years, and perfection is something I've not encountered.
Oof.
Yet.
No, stop it, Mr. Austin.
All right, that's kind of cute.
I see your nephew is with us again. Mr. Weasley?
Weasley is indispensable to my happiness.
Is this the Lady Catherine de Bourgh equivalent?
Jane does enjoy a ball.
Weasley can't abide them.
A ball is an indispensable blessing to the juvenile part of the neighborhood. Everything agreeable in the way of talking and sitting down together, all managed with the utmost decorum. An amiable man could not object.
Oh, Maggie. Here's Leto. Sorry, I still think of him as Children of Dune. Ooh. I don't think they would have been using gloves, though. During the Regency period, as I recall, they were only used for practice sessions. Let me check. Although boxing gloves were invented in the late 1700s, they were not required to be used until 1867. Bouts were typically fought with bare knuckles and no standard rules, and gloves were used for practice. Modern boxing gloves, as we know them today, began in the 1890s. Maybe they were just trying to keep the actors safe.
Running around St. James's like a neck-on-nothing young blood of the fancy? What kind of lawyer will that make?
Typical.
I'm sending you to stay with your other relations, the Lefroids.
Uncle, they live in the country.
Not the country.
My father's nephew is staying with us from London.
He is
A brilliant young lawyer
Lucy, please.
with a reputation.
Cassandra, who is forsaking us for her brother Edward and his family at the coast, whilst Robert voyages to the West Indies with Lord Craven's expedition.
I understand you will be favouring us with a reading?
Do, Jane.
Oh, yes, Jane.
Do.
Advice from a young lady on the engagement of her beloved sister Cassandra. The boundaries of propriety were vigorously assaulted, as was only right, but not quite breached, as was also right.
You just interrupted Jane Austen.
Green velvet coat. Vastly fashionable.
In the Colin Firth version of Pride and Prejudice, there's a little throwaway line about a coat. No, the green one. I wonder if this was a subtle nod to that.
But a metropolitan mind may be less susceptible to extended juvenile self-regard. I was out.
We've all had those writer moments. Oh, it's all rubbish, all of it.
A walk.
Jane, where is your bonnet? And your gloves?
Miss,
All I've detected so far is a general tendency to green above and brown below.
As well, others have detected more. It is celebrated. There is even a book about Selborne Wood.
It was accomplished.
Better.
It was ironic.
Ouch.
Well, I call it
Very high indeed. Refusing to
He's
dance when there are
right
so few
behind you.
gentlemen. Henry,
Jane.
are all your friends so disagreeable? Where exactly in Ireland does he come from, anyway?
Limerick, Miss Austen.
Is Jane basically Darcy in this situation? These are so fun.
Not because it is exhibited at an uncouth rural assembly.
I've had some people wonder why there is so much talking during these sorts of dances. And that was fairly typical because it's very pattern-based. So once you know the dance, your body just moves. It's very easy to talk and dance at the same time. And it was one of the few opportunities that young people could have basically an intimate conversation. And I know that sounds weird considering there's people everywhere, but I mean unchaperoned in a way. Uh-oh. All right, that was another mistake right there. The rule is, after a dance, if you're the gentleman, you always accompany the woman off the floor to the location of her choosing, whether that is to her family, to her friends, to the buffet table, wherever that may be. He would never, in polite society, have just walked off, no matter how much they were arguing. It's a really cute movie so far, but there's so many etiquette mistakes that it's kind of bothering me.
Arrogant, impudent, insufferable, impertinent.
I think a lot of their correspondence still exists. I have tried in vain to fully understand cricket. Oh. Jane, you no.
Jane, can't do that. What on earth are you going to do?
And where is her bonnet? Where are half the people's bonnets/hats? Bullet! Well done. This is one of the reasons that I appreciate the Regency era, because they were much more outdoorsy than, say, the Victorian era was. They loved being outside, running around, swimming, things like that. And it was all very Grecian inspired, very into sports. It was okay to be strong as a woman. We kind of lost that a little bit with the Victorian, and Edwardian kind of reclaimed that with bicycles and women getting back into sports like tennis, things like that. I don't know, there's a sense of freedom that they captured in that moment there.
Natural enough at 15.
Love and sense are enemies at any age. Mrs. Lefroy, may I explore your library?
Of course.
I kind of love that line. I wish that was an introvert out these days. When you're at a party and you're starting to get overwhelmed, may I explore your library? People don't necessarily have a library these days, alas, but if we could just make it mean I need a break from the party and I need to go somewhere quiet, that'd be fantastic. Honestly, I think if you're an extrovert and you're throwing a party and you're inviting introverts, making sure that they have a safe, quiet space to use in your home during the party means they'll probably stay longer. You know, rather than saying, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm just going to go home after an hour or even half an hour. If you have the equivalent of a library and say, as they arrive, hey, you know, if you need some quiet time, I set aside the garage or the home gym, wherever it is, and make it clear that it's okay for them to just disappear for a while, like Jane is doing right here, a lot more introverts would come and stay longer.
Enough to know that your horizons must be widened.
Young woman with the soft corruption.
Read this. And you will understand.
Tom Jones. Ooh. I read Tom Jones when I was younger, partly because of the same reason Jane is, actually. And the thing that surprised me was at the beginning of each chapter, there's a summary of the chapter that's written in a really snarky way by the author. And I kind of fell in love with that style of novel structure. Here's one. The reader's neck is brought into danger by a description. His escape and the great condescension of Miss Bridget Alworthy. A short sketch of that felicity which prudent couples may extract from hatred, with a short apology for those people who overlook imperfections in their friends. Isn't that brilliant? I'm telling you, this book has a reputation for just being, ooh. But really, it's just a great work of fiction. I highly recommend reading it if you haven't.
I have read your book and disapprove.
Of course you do. But of what?
A novel must show how the world truly is. How characters genuinely think, how events actually occur. A novel should somehow reveal the true source of our actions.
There's a bare knuckle fight. Here we have another breach of propriety. Women did not really attend boxing matches. I think they were able to disguise themselves sometimes and would sneak in. Or if they were not of middle class, like Jane Austen is, it would be done. But for Jane to walk up to a boxing match, and even worse, removing her hat like this, no, never in a million years. I'm sorry. Mm-mm. And that's a knockout. He keeps getting distracted incredibly easily. I hate to be so nitpicky about this, but when you're boxing, you get incredibly zoned in. In fact, some people have trouble when you have multiple sparring matches going on fairly nearby, of even being aware enough to not run into people. Like a few times I've had to kind of steer my partner away from another group so that we don't just smash into them, because people get so in the zone. I don't care who's shouting. You would not go like that in a boxing match. I mean, I'm finding this a little bit too hard to swallow. You are 100% focused right here, watching this area to see how their shoulders are moving. Like, you don't watch this, and you certainly don't watch random people in the crowd. Regency boxing tended to be a little bit more spread out. But even so, getting distracted once, that's difficult to believe. But twice? This movie is losing me. He's going to propose. Does she even own a bonnet?
Perhaps the young people would like to take a walk. I see there's a pretty little room.
The wilderness mention. They really are framing it as Pride and Prejudice, aren't they? I love the chickens in the background.
Most sincere I can see, and gentlemanlike, and it honors me, truly.
At least she was very kind to him. He seems like a nice sort of chap.
Affection is desirable. Money is absolutely
Her mother's not wrong.
indispensable.
If I were in this time period, I would have accepted him. Because her mother is right. You can follow your creative accomplishments in your spare time, and it's way easier if you have somewhere stable. With him, she'd have plenty of time. She wouldn't have to be out here feeding the pigs or digging potatoes. She could be writing, and doing so in a room with a nice fire, not having to worry about money. I think I'm too practical for these romantic movies. I'm on her mother's side. Sorry, Jane. Beautiful. I love her little Grecian headdress there. Her whole ensemble right now is the epitome of Regency. Grecian elegance, kind of elevated. Maggie knows what's up. Okay, I have to admit, that shot in Regency films where they move the camera like that as both of them are turning gets me every time. Every single Regency film has that shot, and I'm here for it.
When a young woman such as yourself receives the addresses from a gentleman such as my nephew, it is her duty to accept at once. But what do we find?
There's something special about a garden at night, with the fountains playing in the moonlight. When did she get a dog? That's so cute.
Mrs. Radcliffe. She keeps herself to herself, almost a recluse, but ain't
Even if that fails, that's what the imagination's for.
Your imagination has brought you independence.
You will be generous. I'm sure of it.
You'll speak with him.
Tomorrow, I promise.
Yeah, he's tilting his candlestick and dripping wax everywhere. You gotta keep a candlestick straight. I've learned that the hard way. See, he was doing it right. She just lit a lot of candles. I've found that if you have a candle here, and maybe one more, that's plenty of light to read and write with. When you put candles all over the room like that, it's basically the equivalent of having an overhead electric light where the entire room is lit up, which is fine, but it wastes a lot of candles, and it's just easier to light the area that you're in. I've noticed they do that a lot with movies. I don't think that's what Jane would have done, especially since she comes from a less affluent family where you do have to worry about paying for candles. She wouldn't just light every candle in the room. She probably would have placed them, probably 3 candles, maybe 4 at most, in locations that she needed light. And you don't need 7 or 8 candles to do it. She is writing Pride and Prejudice.
This is an outrage!
If you will allow me to speak, sir.
There's no need. This letter makes it absolutely clear.
Letter?
Now I know what you were at down in Hampshire.
Now we're going with Emma.
On your uncle.
So basically he's turning into Frank Churchill. But she made his relationship with Jane have a happy ending. The actors are doing an outstanding job. You can really feel Jane's pain and Cassandra trying to comfort her in this scene. But all I can think about is the modern hairstyles. I'm so sorry. It's amazingly distracting. These are not Regency hairstyles. They are not wearing bonnets. I can't. I'm sorry. You know what? I think this is why I like the Colin Firth version. The hair is correct. I mean, how hard is it? I just saw Redeeming Love in the theaters. And again, modern hair. It's like in the late 90s, early 2000s, historical films carefully did things correctly. If you look at Wives and Daughters, Pride and Prejudice, absolutely perfect hairstyles. Like mind-blowingly accurate. And then somewhere in the late 2000s, we get this. What happened? Oh no. He's dead.
What is it?
Oh, Cassandra. I think he died of yellow fever, right? Something like that. All too common. I like that they haven't actually told us yet. It's all shown via Cassandra's reaction. She's wearing a bonnet. See, look at this. Is this so difficult? This just fixed the entire scene. Why couldn't we have gotten this earlier? I'm just so happy. It's like completely wrong for the scene, but the fact that she is finally properly attired. There's even gloves.
He's here visiting Mrs. Lefroy, and
He is engaged.
Now we're in Sense and Sensibility with Willoughby.
Take these. Now go quickly.
This is a mistake.
Come. If we hurry, we can still make the morning coach.
Young people. Just not thinking things through. Okay, now she's being Lydia.
How many brothers and sisters do you have in America, Tom?
My profligacy is a beautiful sham.
I can earn money.
It will not be enough. But if our love destroys your family, it will destroy itself.
I'm glad that they showed the transfer of the bag.
I may have less personal charm than Lefroy.
All right, Mr. Collins.
Superficial charm to some eyes.
Who are the women in Hampshire?
Oh.
It was you who wrote the judge.
I totally thought it was Maggie. That's what they were dancing with.
Will all your stories have happy endings?
My characters will have, after a little bit of trouble, all that they desire. But no such happy marriage could now teach the admiring multitude what.
Oh, now you admire her writing? This is one of those films where they clearly took a great deal of trouble with the composition of scenes, with the cast, because all the actors were outstanding. So they checked a lot of the boxes, and then they just figured that's good enough, and just dropped the rest. For me, it doesn't work. If they had just put a little bit more effort into being closer to accurate. I'm not saying that they have to have exact hand-sewn dresses with buttons from the time period. Just make a slight effort. Like, they made effort of 2 out of 10. I'm just asking for like 5 out of 10. Not 10, 5. And the frustrating thing is, in a few of the scenes, they got it right. So I know it's possible, and that almost made it worse. Like, if they were consistently bad through the whole film, it would have been easier to just kind of slowly get used to. But no, it kept just good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And I was just like, I can't handle this visually. I did think it was fun how they were carefully taking moments from her life and paralleling it to her future novels. I thought that juxtaposition was really clever. I liked the writing in this. I thought the screenplay was excellent. I love Jane Austen. I think they captured her spirit, and Anne Hathaway did a fantastic job. And yet the costume designer and the hairstylist just, I don't know what they were thinking. Part of the problem is that their locations were too good. Hear me out. The landscapes, the houses, the set decoration was so on point. As a result, the anachronisms stuck out more, because if there was a consistent level of modern anachronisms, it would be easier to get used to. Like Mandalorian armor, when you're weathering it. If you put a ton of weathering on your bucket, your helmet, and then your greaves have no weathering, they're going to stand out because the rest of your armor, you can see patches of silver underneath the paint, you can see gouges from battle damage. But if your greaves are perfect, it's like, what? You have to have consistent weathering throughout the entire armor. And to me, historical movies have the same requirement. You have to choose what you're doing, and you have to be consistent about it in all aspects of the movie. That means if you're going to be a little bit modern, it needs to be in the costuming. It needs to be in the set design. It needs to be in the language that you use for the film. You need to throw in some modern words. Merlin, the BBC version, they did not try to be accurate to the Middle Ages. The script matched, the settings matched, the costumes matched. And that is why Becoming Jane doesn't work. They hadn't decided what they were doing. And when there isn't a vision that says we're going to be correct to the time period, or we're going to push the boundaries, we're going to make this accessible to a modern audience, and we're not going to try to give the facade of accuracy, you've got to own it. You can't just do it halfway and then give up, which is what this movie did. I'm sorry. Points for effort, I guess. I'm kind of glad I didn't go see this in the theater, because I would have been throwing popcorn at the screen. Like, the one thing they really got right is the music. I think right now I'm going to look up the soundtrack and add it to my iMusic, because just beautiful. They got that right.